Good morning, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. Here are the top stories. US Homeland Security is blocking Harvard's ability to enroll international students. 2 dead and 8 injured in a San Diego plane crash. Türkiye is to provide Syria with 2 billion cubic meters of gas annually. Harvard's large international student body now faces uncertainty as US President Donald Trump's government challenges its visa program over allegations of anti-Semitism and foreign influence. By revoking Harvard's visa privileges, the government says it's demanding greater transparency about foreign students' activities and potential security risks.
The Trump administration has revoked Harvard University's ability to enroll international students. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made the announcement on Thursday, ordering the termination of Harvard's Student and Exchange Visitor Program certification. It means the university can no longer issue visas to new foreign students. Existing students must transfer or risk losing their legal status. Noem accused Harvard of fostering violence, anti-Semitism and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party. The move escalates the administration's campaign against Harvard, one of its main institutional targets. Jay Green, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, supports the decision and argues that elite universities should prioritize American perspectives.
So I don't believe it's illegal. Foreign student visas are a privilege, not an entitlement. In particular, students cannot enter the United States if they provide support for designated terrorist organizations. They wouldn't be allowed to enter the United States. The Trump administration wants to remove students who've provided support to designated terrorist organizations like Hamas, and they want to be able to know which students have done that. So they want access to disciplinary records and to videos of protests.
Harvard rejected the allegations, saying it was illegal and amounted to retaliation, and promised to support its foreign students. Legal experts say Harvard's ongoing lawsuit aims to negotiate a better deal, but the administration's position remains firm.
I think the Trump administration is demonstrating that they're going to prevail in this fight with Harvard. I know that people think Harvard has over $50 billion in endowment and they're, have this status and this history. That's all true, but the federal government is bigger and richer and will prevail here in this fight.
According to the university data, Harvard's international student population for this academic year reached nearly 6,800, making up 27% of the university's total population.
A tragic plane crash occurred in San Diego early this morning. The incident, which caused fire and destruction, left 2 people dead and 8 injured. Authorities are investigating the cause of the crash.
A small civilian plane crash in San Diego, California, has claimed the lives of 2 people and injured 8 others. The incident occurred in the early hours on Thursday.
Some of the individuals are here at the same time. It was dense fog throughout the whole plateau that we had up here. We do have a clipped power line behind us. NTSB and FAA are looking into that to see if that was part of the problem as it came in. They will have a better understanding of that as they do the investigation.
Emergency services were dispatched to the crash site shortly before 4 a.m. local time. As a result of the incident, 1 residential home and several vehicles caught fire.
So the one permanently destroyed is this one right here behind us. We have damage to multiple homes down to the west of us on the street. That damage will be assessed. Our main concern on that damage, I don't know the full extent of the damage because our job is to preserve the scene so NTSB can come in and do the investigation. We removed everybody from the scene, blocked it off right now. We will have better numbers on the full damage of homes after NTSB comes in and starts doing their investigation. It is just this block right now, but we have a large debris field.
The neighborhood where the crash occurred is primarily home to families of service members stationed at various military bases in San Diego. According to officials, approximately 2,300 military families live in the area.
A Chicago-born man has been charged in a deadly shooting outside a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C. Elias Rodriguez faces multiple federal counts, including first-degree murder and murder of foreign officials. The victims, 2 Israeli embassy workers, were gunned down after a diplomatic event hosted by the American Jewish Committee on Wednesday night. Authorities say the 30-year-old shouted "Free Palestine" during his arrest and is being investigated for possible hate crime and terrorism links. The victims, Yadon Lischinski and Sarah Lynn Milgram, were a young couple soon to be engaged. The US House of Representatives has narrowly passed a major Trump-backed tax and spending bill. The bill would fulfill many of Trump's campaign pledges while adding an estimated $3.8 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. The package includes tax breaks on tips and car loans and boosts military and border spending. It now heads to the GOP-controlled Senate before reaching Trump's desk. The vote followed 2 nights of intense debate. Finance ministers from G7 nations have concluded their summit in Banff, issuing a joint communique that underscores unity in tackling global economic challenges. While US tariffs were not explicitly mentioned, Canadian Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne emphasised that the discussions were open and constructive.
The G7 Finance Ministers Summit in Banff in Canada ended Thursday with officials emphasising unity in addressing global economic challenges, despite underlying tensions over US tariffs and trade policies. The joint communique focused on combating non-market practices, implicitly referencing China's trade behaviours, and reaffirmed support for Ukraine, including maintaining sanctions against Russia.
We had very constructive and productive discussion. We understand that we need to reduce uncertainty in order to increase growth. I think, we went back to basics. For me, this G7 is back to basic, back to the core mission. Our mission, my mission when I entered the room, was really to promote stability and growth. And I would say of all the international meetings I've attended, this was one where you had frank discussion, that people shared views on different issues, but also there was a strong call to actions. We found common ground on a number of things. If you look at the communique.
While the communique did not directly mention US tariffs, Canadian Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne asserted that the issue was not avoided during discussions, highlighting the group's commitment to open dialogue.
There's no doubt that there is discussion around that policy of tariff by the United States, but I would say there's also a very constructive discussion about what's the way forward that we can adopt and where can we find common ground to tackle other global challenges. Canada is the biggest customer in the United States. I always say we buy more from the United States than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. So it's quite normal when you meet your biggest customer that there's a lot to discuss,
The summit sets the stage for the upcoming G7 leaders meeting in Kananaskis in Alberta on the 15th of June.
President Vladimir Putin says Russia is establishing a buffer zone along its border with Ukraine. The move is aimed at enhancing security, according to Putin. The Russian president confirmed the decision Thursday during a video meeting with top officials. The announcement follows Putin's visit to the border region at Kursk and a phone call with US President Donald Trump. Both leaders discussed peace prospects, with Putin thanking Trump for backing resumed talks between Moscow and Kyiv. Putin claims the war is now on a path toward resolution, though US sources suggest otherwise. Technical-level peace talks involving Russia and Ukraine could happen as early as next week at the Vatican. That's according to Finnish President Alexander Stub. In an interview with Finnish media, Stub said the discussions would likely include representatives from the US and Europe. He highlighted the EU's growing role in the peace process, saying this is what we've hoped for from the beginning. Earlier this week, US President Donald Trump spoke with European leaders, sharing details of his recent conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Earlier, we discussed the Vatican as a possible venue for the next round of Russia-Ukraine talks with Alek Kasman, director of Protect Ukraine Now. Alek told us that Russian President Vladimir Putin may be trying to buy time, but that President Donald Trump's patience is running out. He also shared his thoughts on why the talks might be held in the Vatican.
Putin is trying to bite himself time, or at least play this game with one spectator as a show, specifically for Mr. Trump. But I think this is going to end soon, because Trump begins to verbalize this, that Putin is not interested in ending the war, and he is going to eventually walk out of the idea of negotiations. I again don't believe that any peace talks next week or in 3 weeks or next year going to be fruitful until there's a change on the ground. Ukraine has to be in the position to defend itself. As long as Russia is able to push forward, there will be no negotiations. The aggressor has to be first stopped, and then there'll be an opportunity to discuss what's next. The only thought that comes to mind is their attention that population in other countries like Europe, European countries, or United States can pay to these negotiations if they are hosted by Vatican. There's that possibility. Otherwise, I don't think it matters much. And again, all talks are going to be all talks are not going to be fruitful until there's a change on the ground.
The European Parliament has approved sweeping tariff hikes on fertilizers and farm products from Russia and Belarus. The move aims to curb Russian war funding and protect EU food security. Meantime, Moscow calls the tariff hikes self-defeating. The tariffs take effect from July 1st.
The European Parliament approved significant tariff increases on fertilizers and agricultural imports from Russia and Belarus, aiming to reduce EU dependence on these countries and limit financial support for Russia's military activities in Ukraine. The new measures include a 6.5% tariff on fertilizers, with additional duties escalating from 40 to 45 euros per tonne in 2025 to 2026 to 430 euros per tonne by 2028. An extra 50% duty will apply to certain agricultural products such as meat, dairy, fruit and vegetables. These tariffs are set to take effect on July 1st. EU lawmakers argue that these tariffs will help prevent Russia from using the EU market to finance its military efforts and encourage diversification of fertilizer sources within the EU. However, European farmers have expressed concerns about potential increases in production costs and the impact on food prices.
We need to stop financing Russia's war in Ukraine. War is right next to our external borders. Stopping it, it's needed for our safety. Thank you.
The present level of imports from the Russian Federation, competing unfairly in the EU market due to gas price differences, is undermining the EU industry. At the same time, it is essential to ensure that the Union farmers have predictable, sufficient and affordable access to nitrogen-based fertilizers, as this is indispensable to the stabilization of the EU agricultural markets.
The decision has sparked criticism from the Kremlin, with spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stating that the EU will face higher costs and lower quality fertilizers as a result. Peskov emphasized that Russian fertilizers are of high quality and that global demand remains strong, suggesting that other markets will compensate for the EU's reduced imports. The legislation still requires formal approval from EU member states, which have indicated support for the measures. The European Commission has committed to monitoring the impact on the internal market and taking action to mitigate any negative effects on the EU agriculture sector.
Germany is stepping up its commitment to European security. During a high-profile visit to Lithuania, Chancellor Friedrich Merz marked the deployment of a German brigade to the Baltics, vowing to defend every inch of NATO territory amid rising tensions with Russia.
Germany is reinforcing its role in NATO with the permanent deployment of a brigade in Lithuania. Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Defence Minister Boris Pistorius arrived in Vilnius for a ceremony marking the start of the mission. The deployment, which will eventually include up to 5,000 troops, is expected to be fully operational by 2027. Merz said the move symbolises Germany's growing responsibility in European defence and its commitment to protecting NATO's eastern flank.
We know that security doesn't begin at our borders. It begins where our allies and partners have to defend it. That's why Lithuania's security is also our security. The protection of Vilnius is the protection of Berlin.
Merz's visit comes ahead of next month's NATO summit, where alliance leaders will set new targets on capability gaps and defence budgets. The German Chancellor also emphasised unity among NATO allies, particularly in the face of Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine.
We will of course continue to discuss how we can achieve a ceasefire and lasting peace for Ukraine. 4 things are important to us. Firstly, we will not allow Russia to drive a wedge between us. We stand firmly alongside Ukraine, but we also stand together as Europeans as a whole, and we play as a team with the US whenever possible.
Merz also addressed concerns about the long-term US military presence in Europe, saying there are no signs that American troops will withdraw. Meanwhile, calls for increased defence spending are intensifying across the alliance. Lithuania will raise its defence budget to 5% of GDP next year, while Germany, having met NATO's 2% target, plans further increases.
Finland is ramping up security along the eastern border, warning of a potential Russian troop build-up once the war in Ukraine ends. The development comes as Helsinki continues to bolster its border security with a new fence aimed at deterring hybrid threats.
Finland says it expects Russia to further build up troops along their shared border once the war in Ukraine ends, following reports that Moscow has recently reinforced its military bases near the NATO frontier. Amid rising tensions, Finland completed the first kilometres of a planned 200-kilometre fence along its border with Russia. The 4.5-metre-high barbed wire fence includes surveillance gear to help manage security risks and deter unauthorised crossings. Border officials say the fence became necessary after Finland accused Russia of deliberately sending migrants across the border in 2023.
This fence, based on the experiences by ourselves and other EU colleague states, we have understood that this is the best solution at the moment, and it is necessary to control the large masses of people if they are trying to, for example, violently enter Finland illegally.
It's a huge project nationally. If you think about the whole eastern border, we have the longest border of all the EU states with Russia. 1,340 kilometers. The fence will only encompass around 200 kilometers in total. However, 140 kilometers will be in southeast Finland. So the majority will be here, where in previous years there have been also more border incidents as well. So it's a higher risk area for us.
With migrant crossings nearly halted since Finland closed all border points with Russia in late 2023, construction of the 200-kilometre border fence continues. The project began after a spike in migration, which Helsinki believes Moscow deliberately orchestrated. In 2023, around 1,300 asylum seekers from countries like Syria and Somalia crossed into Finland through the Russian border, prompting the closure. Russia has denied involvement, while the European Court of Human Rights has asked Finland to justify the indefinite border shutdown.
France's prison crisis is deepening as prisons become overcrowded, housing tens of thousands more inmates than available cells. Authorities are now exploring extreme and controversial solutions, such as building high-security prisons in remote jungles and renting jail space abroad.
France's prison system is bursting at the seams. Data from December 2024 shows nearly 83,000 people incarcerated in facilities built for just over 62,000. According to the Council of Europe, France ranks third in Europe for prison overcrowding, behind only Cyprus and Romania. The severity of the crisis has led the government to explore extraordinary and radical solutions. President Emmanuel Macron suggested leasing prison space abroad. It is a strategy already tested by countries like Belgium and Denmark, which have housed inmates in the Netherlands. Estonia has also expressed interest in monetising its unused prison capacity. However, this concept faces legal, ethical and logistical challenges, with critics questioning the treatment of inmates held overseas. A recent Justice Ministry report proposed an exceptional one-time reduction of sentences for all inmates. This recommendation has stirred political controversy. Justice Minister Gérald Darmanin rejected the idea, instead pushing for rapid expansion. He promised 5,000 new prison places within 2 years and another 3,000 by 2027. Much of this capacity will come from modular units built off-site to save time and costs. Perhaps the most striking plan is unfolding thousands of kilometres away. In French Guiana, authorities announced plans to build a 500-bed high-security prison deep in the Amazon rainforest. Expected by 2028, the facility will house drug traffickers and offenders linked to the South American narcotics trade, aiming to strike at criminal networks at their source. As public frustration mounts, experts warn that it could encourage crime and harm public safety.
The White House says that negotiations between President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about a deal with Iran were progressing in a positive direction after they spoke on Thursday. White House spokesperson Karen Leavitt told reporters that Trump had conveyed that the deal with Tehran could end in one of two ways, either with a positive diplomatic resolution or with a much more negative outcome for Iran. Leavitt said the president was committed to pursuing diplomacy to avoid the latter scenario. A fifth round of nuclear talks between Iran and the US are expected on Friday in Rome. However, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that if the US insists on completely stopping uranium enrichment, there will be no deal. Turkey is deepening its energy and reconstruction ties with Syria. Ankara has announced it will begin exporting natural gas and dramatically increase electricity exports in the coming months to Damascus. The move comes as part of broader efforts to aid Syria's recovery and boost bilateral cooperation in energy and infrastructure.
Ankara will soon begin natural gas exports to Syria, totaling 2 billion cubic meters annually. The exports are expected to enhance electricity generation in key Syrian regions, including Aleppo and Homs. It's after Turkey and Syria signed a comprehensive framework agreement on cooperation in energy, mining and hydrocarbons on Thursday. Turkey's Minister of Energy and Natural Resources Alparslan Bayraktar made the announcement at a joint press conference with Syrian Energy Minister Mohammed al-Bashir in Damascus.
Biz buraya Halep'e kadar ve Humus'a kadar gelebilecek şekilde yıllık yaklaşık 2 milyar metreküplük.
We have also intensified our efforts regarding natural gas. We will soon begin exporting gas that will reach Aleppo and Homs, providing an additional contribution of approximately 1,300 megawatts of electricity generation in the region, with an annual volume of around 2 billion cubic meters.
Bir yoğun çalışmayı kendileriyle ve ekipleriyle birlikte yürütüyoruz.
The minister pointed out that with the easing of international sanctions, Syria will have access to crucial investment and financing opportunities. Bayraktar added that Turkey is ready to support Syria's development and is committed to working on projects that will improve living conditions for the Syrian people.
Ve son olarak şunu ifade edeyim. Burada bugün birlikte imzaladığımız enerji ve madenler alanında
The framework agreement we have just signed in the fields of energy, mining and carbon resources constitutes an important roadmap for our future cooperation.
Daha farklı anlaşmaları imzalarken bundan sonra daha sık göreceksiniz.
Minister al-Bashir confirmed that the natural gas pipeline extending from Turkey's Kilis district into Syria will become operational by June. He added that Turkish firms will play a central role in the mining and electricity distribution sectors, while joint technical units will be established to further cooperation across various energy domains. This renewed energy partnership marks a significant step in regional diplomacy and infrastructure rebuilding, laying the groundwork for broader economic ties between the two neighboring countries.
The Azerbaijan ambassador to Brussels and Luxembourg, Vakif Sadigov, said that meaningful and open discussions on political and security cooperation were discussed at the 6th European Union and Azerbaijan Security Dialogue in Brussels on Thursday. The meeting was co-chaired by Hikmat Hajiev, Assistant to the President of Azerbaijan, and Olaf Skog, Deputy Secretary-General of the European External Action Service. This meeting follows recent high-level engagements in Malta, Baku, Brussels and Tirana, underscoring the importance of regular dialogue amid evolving regional and global developments. The relationship between the US and Georgia appears strained as recent remarks from American officials hint at growing unease over Tbilisi's political trajectory. Our correspondent Nini Nikolashvili has more from Tbilisi, Georgia.
Tensions between the US and Georgia are growing as recent comments from American officials raise questions about the future of their relationship. At a congressional hearing this week, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio suggested that administration is reviewing its approach to Georgia in light of concerns about country's political trajectory. His remarks followed the criticism from Congressman Joe Wilson, who called on the U.S. to impose consequences on what he described as anti-American stance of Georgia's ruling party. While Rubio did not name Georgia directly, he said that the U.S. would consider whether if it was in its national interest to tolerate governments seen as unfriendly of American values. If it's not, he explained the actions would be taken. Georgian Foreign Minister Makab Bachorishvili rejected these accusations, calling them misleading and unreflective of Georgia's current alignment. She emphasized that statements from Rubio were just broad and not specifically aimed at Georgia. While reassurances from Tbilisi, uncertainty remains over how Washington will proceed. The U.S. officials appears to be watching closely to see whether Georgia will continue to align with American values or to begin a diverge. It's Nini Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Georgia has strongly condemned Lithuania's decision to cancel visa-free travel for holders of Georgian diplomatic and service passports. Parliament Speaker Shalva Papuashvili called the move a gross and legally unfounded violation of the 2010 EU-Georgia visa agreement. He stressed the need to respect international commitments benefiting top officials and ordinary citizens. Meantime, Lithuania has ordered its foreign ministry to notify European Union and fellow member states within 5 days. Earlier this month, Estonia took the same step. Armenia's shadow economy grew sharply, with hidden business turnover rising by 84 billion drams, or about $220 million US. This amounts to a 146% increase compared to last year. Edward Hokabyan, head of Armenia's State Revenue Committee, said this caused the government to miss out on $110 million US worth of taxes, 80% more than in the same period of 2024. He added that tax inspections were done at fewer businesses this year, but authorities still uncover $117 million US in unpaid taxes. Uzbekistan has set an ambitious goal to welcome 15 million tourists by the end of this year. The plans were announced during a video conference chaired by President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. Officials say easing travel rules and expanding international partnerships will be key to reaching that goal.
Uzbekistan is preparing to simplify entry rules for citizens of Russia, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. Under the new plan, travelers from these countries could soon be allowed to enter Uzbekistan for up to 30 days using only a national ID card. For children, a so-called kinder passport would serve as a valid travel document. Currently, this simplified procedure applies only to citizens of Kyrgyzstan. The agreement between Tashkent and Bishkek came into force in 2023, making Kyrgyzstan the first country whose citizens can enter Uzbekistan using ID cards. The new measures are outlined in a presidential decree signed on May 15th. The document instructs the Minister of Internal Affairs to begin negotiations with Russia, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan within the next 3 months. The decree also includes a proposal to introduce a visa-free regime for US citizens, allowing them to stay in Uzbekistan for up to 30 days. At the same time, the government plans to hold talks with Washington on easing visa restrictions for Uzbek nationals. The push is part of a broader tourism strategy. By the end of 2025, Uzbekistan aims to reach 15.8 million international visits, bringing $4 billion in tourism revenue and encourage 40 million domestic trips. Nearly 400 new tour operators are also expected to launch across the country. And starting June 1st, travelers from Bahrain, Kuwait and Oman will also be allowed to enter Uzbekistan visa-free for up to 30 days, a step toward closer ties with the Gulf region. Tourism numbers are already rising. In April alone, more than 1 million foreign visitors arrived. And in 2024, Uzbekistan hit a major milestone, over 10 million international tourists in a single year for the first time. Fariza Kalimurzina, A News, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Let's take a look at the latest in sports now. It's a packed weekend in the world of sports, with action and updates from across Europe and beyond. From crucial ice hockey championship results to the build-up for the French Open and a decisive night in the Europa League, plus the final fixtures in Europe's top leagues and the latest transfer buzz. Here's your full roundup.
Let's take you to the World Championships ice hockey in Sweden and Denmark. It's the quarterfinals. We're starting to get to the really exciting part. That will be finished on the 25th of May, so some huge games. Let me give you the rundown of that. USA played Finland. It's the third time that they got beat Finland in the quarterfinal on the run. So USA winning that 5-2. Switzerland beating Austria 6-0. Sweden beating Chechnya 5-2. And Canada losing to Denmark 2-1. So your semi-final fixtures, which are very interesting, Sweden versus USA, Switzerland versus Denmark. They will be played on the 24th. Also, as well, to look forward to, we have the tennis French Open with Wimbledon just not far around the corner. You got your likes of Alcaraz, Djokovic, Sinner. You got the young Jack Draper as well, which is very exciting. He looks like he's on the cusp of winning his first major, so an exciting summer for him. Also as well, which we've just had, is the Europa League final. Wow, what a game. What about the stories as well with all the fans? It was so difficult to get to Bilbao, is that some fans were getting train journeys for 25 hours, boats for 23 hours, going into different parts of Europe, flying in from other parts of Europe just to get to this game. There was about 80,000 fans there, only 15,000 each for United fans and Spurs fans. But on the day, the tensions were there. Winner takes all. When I say winner takes all, it's a Champions League spot, and it's 100 million, which is worth to the winners, and the winners were Spurs. Johnson with the only goal, and they held on. Manchester United threw everything at them, but just couldn't get the job done. So Coach Amarin is under massive pressure. What type of summer are Manchester United going to have? No Europe at all for them next season. Spurs and Postecoglou, delighted for him. He took a lot of criticism from the press throughout the year. Let's get one thing straight, both teams' form in the Premier League unacceptable, but it's changed, and it's been a long time for Spurs. They've been the laughing stock with teams saying that you never win anything. Well, they've got the monkey off the back, so to speak, with that. So well done to Ange Postecoglou. I hope he stays, and I hope the future's bright for him. But Coach Amarin, Manchester United, it doesn't get any worse. You hit rock bottom, and I just wonder what they're going to do in the summer and how the future is going to go on from that. Also this weekend, very exciting with the Premier League, and this is is the chase to get into Europe, and it's all heating up. It's all taken us to the last day. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of the fixtures. What we have: Fulham, City. City, I would say, need a point. If they can win, well, that will be them to get into the Champions League. After that, Bournemouth, Leicester, Ipswich, West Ham, Liverpool, Palace. Liverpool will parade the trophy. United, Villa. United just come off the defeat in the final, so there'll be tensions there at Old Trafford. But Villa need to win to get into the Champions League. Newcastle need to beat Everton. Forest and Chelsea, that is a huge game of football. That is once again winner takes all. That will get you in the Champions League. And then Southampton, Arsenal, Spurs, Brighton, and Wolves, Brentford, and that will be the end and the curtain closing on the Premier League. Also Serie A, it takes us to the very end, and I've been really intrigued with this. It's Napoli versus Cagliari and Como versus Inter. At the moment, Napoli are top of the league. Win the game in Napoli, you are champions, and the party will begin. That will be unbelievable. I talk about Scott McTominay, who left Manchester United to go to Napoli. He's a hero there with the performances he's been put on. And Conte, Lukaku, all these players are playing. But Inter, they are in the Champions League final as well. This might not be all over. Also, I'd like to say about Coach Ranieri. Remember when he used to be at Leicester City? What a job he's done when he's gone to Roma. He went in there, they've lost 2 in 18. They are on the cusp of making it into the Champions League as well, so that's another one to look out for. So great job he's done as well. It's all about if Juventus drop points, then all of a sudden if Roma win, they make the Champions League, and wow, what a story that would be for him. Also some transfer news as well. Frimpong to Liverpool, Martinez, the goalkeeper at Liverpool, maybe to Manchester United, Cunha to United, and also just to finish off as well, Luka Modric from Real Madrid. What a career he's had. 6 Champions Leagues, 28 trophies at Real Madrid. It's going to be his final games, but he's going to play the final games in the World Club Cup. So legend of the game, and it comes to the end of his career as well. I'll be all over everything. I'll be back with you on Monday. I look forward to seeing you then.
That's the world news for the hour. Stay with us on A News for more updates.